Shashank Joshi is an Associate Fellow at the Royal United Services Institute for Defence and Security Studies. He joins us live now from our London studio. Shashank Joshi, what is so unique about the Apache helicopter? Why is it so lethal? And what firepower does it bring to bear on the battlefield in Libya?
Sure. Well, the great benefit of Apache helicopters and their French equivalent, the Gazelles, are that they can fly low and slow, whereas fast attack jets, as the name implies, fly at a very high altitude, very fast. So if you have small groups of people on the ground, perhaps hiding behind buildings, hiding behind urban cover, attack helicopters can go very low to the ground, they are very maneuverable, and they can bring to bear the same sort of machine guns and missiles that fast jets can, but with far greater precision.
NATO, of course, says the mission is to protect civilians, but are they still sticking to that mandate with this escalation of airborne firepower, do you think?
Well, everyone is fully aware now, I think, that the mission long ago escalated into regime change. That was extremely clear from the point at which Presidents Obama, Sarkozy and David Cameron presented their joint statement calling for Colonel Gaddafi to go. So everything we've seen after that point has been a tactical innovation to push Gaddafi out. It's not mission creep so much as new tactics and instruments designed to apply pressure on Tripoli itself, whether that's Apache attack helicopters or whether that's attacks on his compound inside Tripoli.
All right, so what's your assessment of how the Apaches will be used on the ground to actually support the rebel advance as they move towards the west?
Sure. Well, first of all, they'll be used within striking distance of naval vessels. They're not going to be used on land bases. They will be used off ships. So that limits their use. They can't, for example, hit targets deep inside the west of the country or deep in the hinterland, south of main cities. What they can do, what I think they will be doing, is building on the gains made by the rebels in places like Misrata. Misrata has now been cleared of Gaddafi loyalists, and the attack helicopters will be used to mop up residual Gaddafi forces and enforce some sort of buffer zone around the city. What they won't be doing is risky missions deep inside Tripoli. They're not designed for that. That would present unacceptable risks to NATO personnel. So I think they'll be used with extreme caution, at least at the beginning.
As you were saying earlier, Shashank, the Apaches are a hovering artillery platform, but they are also vulnerable to ground fire because they have to fly at low altitude, and that's a big problem, isn't it?
Absolutely. They have been used extremely intensively in both Iraq and Afghanistan, but they've also suffered enormous amounts of damage. They've been struck to the ground a number of times, not just by shoulder-launched missiles, but also by anti-aircraft fire and small arms, of which, let's remember, there is a great deal inside Libya. So, in a way, what this is doing is shifting the burden of civilian casualties, shifting the risks away from civilians onto NATO personnel to some extent. And in doing so, it means politically this has become a much more risky mission. And what that tells us is, I think, just how desperate those in London and Paris are that this could now drag on for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah, so, I mean, this has a diplomatic and a political dimension to it, Shashank. I was going to say to you as a final thought, what is the sort of political and diplomatic impact of the deployment of these Apaches then?
I think it'll be very severe. I think it will show Colonel Gaddafi that his army, which is already suffering with 120 defections, is going to come under sustained pressure for many weeks, that NATO is not going away. I think the game is now up. I think the question is the game up within weeks, or will it take well into the autumn to get this finished?
All right, Shashank Joshi, thank you very much indeed for talking to Al Jazeera.